All right, so in case we're not awake yet, here's a random video just to wake you up. Let's see if this works. Work.
I went bowling the other night and I saw a man pray to his bowling ball. An adult human being prayed to God for bowling help. Please, God, please give me this moment of strength. Please, Lord, in your name, give me this moment of glory. No, man. God is not going to help you bowl, okay? I think God has more important things to do than help you bowl. But then I started thinking about how screwed up the world is right now. Maybe God does have time. Because haven't you ever had a long list of things to do for the day, and you only pick the easy things to do first? Maybe that's what God is doing. All right, so genocide, poverty, war. I'm gonna get that 7-10 split. You're welcome, Buffalo. Oh, hey, Africa. Sorry again for the delay. Maybe after the Super Bowl. I'm kidding. Of course, I'm kidding. God doesn't exist. Surprise! We're adult humans here. That joke was kind of a metaphor for life, wasn't it? It ends with, God doesn't exist. Surprise!
That comedian's name is Hari Kondabolu, in case you're interested. Okay, so what I want to talk about is, let me tell you a story first about why the campus movement and how to get people excited and out about their atheism is such a big deal to me. A few years ago, I had a chance to visit a lot of Christian churches, and I ended up writing this book about it called I Sold My Soul on eBay. And one of the things that happened as a result of that book is I got to go to a few different Christian churches and talk about what I, as an atheist, saw when I went to a lot of these places. And at one of these, I got an email from this guy who said, hey, we'd love for you to come speak at our campus. We're actually a Christian campus, so I hope that's okay, but every semester we try to bring someone to our school who totally disagrees with what most of the students at our school believe. So for example, a couple years ago we brought in a feminist. And last year we brought in a local Democrat. And he said, we thought it'd be interesting if we brought in an atheist, so could you come? And he said, P.S., I'm also an atheist. And the reason I go here is because my dad works here, so I get free tuition. So I figure I might as well get my education, then graduate, then do whatever I want. So I went there, and the reception was very silent almost the entire way through. However, he introduced me to a couple of his friends, the couple people that he was out as an atheist to. And that's a risky thing, because if the administration found out he was an atheist, he would be expelled. So he introduced me to a couple of the friends who knew. They were really, really nice people. One of them was this lady who told me, she's a Christian. She said she teaches at a Sunday school there. I'm a teacher too. That's my day job. I'm a high school math teacher. She said she was a teacher too. And she said, I teach the Sunday school at the church here. I don't get total control over what I teach them. They say, this week you got to teach them this stuff. But she gets a little flexibility in how she talks about it. So one day she said her church gave her these gingerbread men cutouts, and they wanted her to talk to her 5th and 6th grade kids, and they had to draw. Actually, they were younger. I think they were like 8-year-olds. So what is that, like 3rd grade? And she wanted she had to give them the gingerbread men, and the kids were supposed to draw what a Christian looks like. And she was a little disturbed by this, because she's like, you don't know what a Christian looks like. They look like everybody. You gotta talk to them and figure out what they believe in. Then you know if they're a Christian. And then the church said, and here's some more gingerbread men. And then the kids are supposed to draw what a non-Christian looks like. And she's like, this is a bad idea. But the kids did it. She did what she was supposed to do. And she saved for me a couple of the drawings. Because she figured I would appreciate it. So this is what a kid said a Christian looks like. He has a banana in his hand, which is really interesting if you've seen the Kirk Cameron video. He has nicely parted hair. He's saying, I love God. He has a cross in his hand. Nice shirt and pants tucked in, parted hair. Okay, so that's what a Christian looks like, as you can tell. And now what does a non-Christian look like? Same kid, by the way. Which really does look like everyone in this room. Bottle in his hand. He has tattoos coming out of his arms. He didn't bother to comb his hair. He has a cigarette or worse, coming out of his mouth. He ripped off the sleeves of his shirt because he's just pissed off. I think he has a tattoo on his neck. I think I'm most offended by the unibrow. But here's the thing. If this kid is 8, I don't think anyone, including his parents, including his pastor, I don't think any of them are sitting him down and saying, this is what a Christian looks like, this is what a non-Christian looks like. But this kid is picking it up from somewhere. And that's the thing. When you go to a lot of campuses, especially in places that are in the Bible Belt, especially really conservative areas, this perception stays with a lot of people for a while. And we're telling, atheists to go on campus and come out as an atheist and let people know that you can be good without God and things like that. And that's the image a lot of people have about atheists. So how do you change that perception? I think one of the biggest ways we could do that is getting college students to band together and say, look, we are atheists, it's okay, and this isn't exactly accurate. And let's talk about why that is. So, let me tell you one more thing, and this is why it's so important to come out. A few years ago, there was a study done. It was called the American Religious Identification Survey. They asked people 10 years ago, and they asked them now, what's your religious belief? What's your religious identification? And they said, Catholicism, for example. In some states, the percentage of Catholics went up. In some states, it went down. The same thing with Protestants. Some states, it did go down. But the percentage of people claiming no religion, which includes atheists and people who just don't want to label, it went up in every single state. So the number of people who are coming out as atheists is going up. I think that's a good thing. That's going to help all of us. Makes it easier for us to come out as atheists too. And one more image just to take a look at. This was a study done. I'm not going to go into all the science behind it. But basically, they did a study where they told a group of people, we want you to read this paragraph, that's a control paragraph, maybe something about food. And then they're going to ask some questions, but really what they're trying to elicit is, are people discriminating against atheists? Do you trust the people in this group if they say they don't believe in God? But they had them first read a paragraph about food as a control thing, or they had them read a paragraph that said, atheists are prevalent in this area, or the percentage of atheists, it has risen over the past number of years. And what you're seeing here is the anti-atheist prejudice when they didn't know atheists were out there, it was pretty high. Those are the bars on the left side of both of these graphs. But when they found out that atheists were prevalent in the area, the amount of discrimination they had, can you trust these people, that saying the answer no, that went down significantly. Now, again, I'm not going into all the details of this, but the point is, in this study, the point they were trying to make is, when people believe there are more atheists around, they're less likely to think that they are distrustful or, not trustworthy or anything like that. So again, it's important to come out of the closet. So that's where I'm coming from. I worked for years with a group called the Secular Student Alliance, and what our group does is we help create and promote campus atheist groups around the country. And we have over 250 groups now. It's amazing. It is a membership organization, the entire organization functions because we have a lot of members. So if you're interested, JT Everhart, one of our staffers, is back there, and he will be glad to tell you far more about the SSA. But a lot of the examples I'm going to show you today are SSA groups and what they've done on their campuses. So let's start with that. What are college kids doing to really get the message out that atheists exist, that we can be good? And one of the things they're doing is just being bold. They're not afraid to take their stances. They're not afraid of being public as atheists. And here's one example of that. This is in Indiana. A group in Bloomington said, we want to take this billboard, "You can be good without God," and put it on buses in our city. And this is, we see a lot of billboards now. Fred Edwards is going to talk about what United Core is doing. You're going to see a lot of these images. But this was early on in all the billboard campaigns we're seeing. And it's in Bloomington, Indiana, which is a really big deal. So they raised the money to buy this ad, to put it up on a few buses. They did that. The backlash was huge. I mean, every local paper, the city paper, they were all talking about these ads. They were on the local news. And eventually it got to the point where one of the student leaders, Eoban, was invited to speak on Fox News with someone from the religious right and talk about the campaign. Considering it's a college group putting that thing together from start to finish, that's a huge deal. But they're not afraid of that. They welcome that dialogue. Because, again, how can you be offended by what that billboard says? If you're offended by that, you have a problem, you know? Okay, so that's one thing. Something that's going on in Missouri in a couple months, Skepticon 4. It's kind of like this. It's an entire conference put together by a local group. Not only do they've done this for a few years now, this is the fourth one. It's an entirely free conference. It's run by the students. It's put together by students. And they have a whole bunch of speakers too. As someone who started a campus group when I was in college, I think the biggest thing we were able to do is have a debate on God's existence. And we were able to fly in a debater representing our side. We had a Catholic professor representing the theist side. And we got a few hundred people in. I think the registrants that are showing up at Skepticon 4 are like over 1,000 people. And it's entirely student run, which is just amazing. One thing that you see on a lot of campuses is they're not afraid to take advantage of those organizational fairs where you can just sit on the quad, get behind a table, kind of like what's going on the back of this room, and let people know, look, we're an atheist group, we exist on this campus. If you're interested in learning more about what we think, come in for a meeting. And sometimes they have very clever ways of doing this. So Jen McCright's here, and one thing her group did a few years ago, they did a thing called Fiction for Fiction. And they said, look, we think all holy books are fictional, so if you bring us your fiction books, or if you bring us your holy books, we'll give you another work of fiction right back. We'll do a trade. How's that? It's not quite like in your face. It raises an interesting point. You know, the discussions begin. Why do you think the Bible is fiction? And they can have those discussions back there. But that's a pretty bold thing to do on a college campus. Again, one in Indiana. If you want to talk about going really bold, the University of Illinois did something a couple of years ago that was a pretty big deal. If any of you saw South Park a couple of years ago, they did a show about the Muhammad drawings. And they said, you know, those Muhammad cartoons were drawn in Europe and there was all this riots and backlash and stuff. And they said, it's ridiculous that people just drew cartoons featuring Muhammad and they got death threats. And the people at South Park basically put Muhammad into an episode. They said, hey, Muhammad's appearing on Family Guy. Isn't that crazy? And it's going to air on TV. And everyone in South Park was going crazy about that. But Comedy Central censored the image of Muhammad that aired on the cartoon against the will of the creators. And so there was this response online that said, it's ridiculous that we're so afraid of drawing this Muhammad character. How about all of us draw Muhammad? How about we change our Facebook profile photos and just draw a stick figure image of Muhammad and make it our profile photo? Because if enough of us do it, they can't get to all of us. And so at the University of Illinois, this is in Champaign-Urbana, they said, well, look, we're not going to try to draw an offensive drawing of Muhammad. Let's do that. Let's draw a smiling stick figure and chalk it on our campus. And let's see what the reaction is. Let's have that discussion about whether or not that's a good or bad thing. So they did that. If you can see that, they said, you know, AAF, the Atheists, Agnostics, and Freethinkers, support Trey and Matt, the creators of South Park, and the right to free speech. And you can see there's that stick figure drawing in the upper left corner. And they did that a couple times. They had this one too. AAF supports Matt and Trey. To me, that's not an offensive drawing at all. But they were called basically a hate group by Muslim groups on campus, editorials in their school paper. So then this idea spread. Because again, if they're getting backlash for that, then other campuses want to talk about doing this too. So at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, they did the same thing. They went on their campus. I don't know if you can see that, but it says Muhammad, and it's pointing to that smiling stick figure. They actually did one thing that the U of I group didn't do. They wrote an email to the Muslim student group on campus saying, look, we're going to do this. We want you to know we're doing this ahead of time. It's not like a sneak attack. But we want to tell you why we're doing it. Just FYI, so you know. The group wrote back and said, we don't appreciate this. You are mocking our God, or you're offending us, and this is blasphemy. But I will give the Muslim group credit for one thing. They kind of, okay, this is scary. As the atheist group was chalking these Muhammads, the Muslim group basically walked right behind them, and after they drew this, they did something that I think is kind of funny. They basically changed the drawings a little bit and made it Muhammad Ali. Oxymoron. All right, well played. But, so this is the question. Apparently this is not offensive, right? Because it's Muhammad Ali. But then they took it a step, the atheist group said, how can we respond to this? Because again, the goal here is not to piss off Muslim students, because we like Muslim students. The objective here is to say, look, we have a right to free speech. If we want to rip on religion, we should be allowed to do that. And it's America, we should be allowed to do that. So they went around and they really want to broach this question of, well, what is Muhammad? What constitutes a drawing of Muhammad? So they did this one, censored. Is that offensive? How about this one? Is that? It got to the point where they were just drawing like dot, dot, smile. And that was also seen as offensive. Like, at what point do we have to say this is all ridiculous, go ahead and draw what you want? But this is the type of discussion they wanted to have. In fact, they were able to have a discussion on their campus, co-sponsored with the Muslim group, to talk about whether or not these were offensive. I'm not saying the Muslim students, understood where we were coming from or anything like that, but at least they had that discussion, and that happened on other campuses across the country too. And I should say, when I say these groups did this, it's not like every atheist in these groups agreed to this. There was a lot of dissent and a lot of discussion within the groups about whether this was appropriate to do, whether this was just a jerky move on the atheist part, but they had those discussions within the group, majority won, and that's why they ended up doing it here. Actually, at Northwestern University, they tried to do something similar. At Northwestern, they have something on campus called The Rock. I grew up in Chicago, I'm from Chicago now, and I remember going to Northwestern on college visits when I was in high school, and The Rock was one of those things they showed you on every campus visit. And what The Rock was it's just a random rock on campus, and basically you could draw whatever you wanted on it, but in order to get the right to draw whatever you wanted on it, you had to stake it out. So if you wanted it tomorrow, you had to basically stay the night in front of the rock so no one else could get it, and then it's yours. And people have put marriage proposals up there, people have put, join our fraternity, sorority, what have you. And so the atheist group at Northwestern said, hey, after this Muhammad thing happened, we're gonna take the rock and we're gonna save it for ourselves, but we're gonna say it's a free speech rock on this day. And we're gonna hand people markers so they could draw anything they want to. Even if it's offensive, even if it's blasphemous, we're gonna say, look, it's okay. If you wanna write anything, you're allowed to. There were some interesting things that people put as versions of blasphemy. Facebook sucks. They put swears on there, and they said as people wrote swear words out, they've never done that before. They were like, wow, this feels weird. But it's kind of cool, just saying, look, all of this is free speech. We have a right to do all this. You could draw an image of Muhammad on there if you want, and there's nothing wrong with that. Those are the conversations that they're trying to get out there because they're not seeing it elsewhere on their campus. Okay, shifting gears from that. University of South Carolina, they have a group called the Pastafarians. They said, look, we want to show people that there are some verses in the Bible that don't really project this loving image that you tend to see. And one of them said, if someone doesn't believe in God, if someone's a heathen, you have to stone them to death. So they made that point and they said, we're going to have Stone an Atheist Day, where for $1, you could get a water balloon. There would be an atheist standing on the wall, and you could throw a water balloon at the atheist, kind of a metaphorical stoning of that person. And they took that money, and I think it was a group fundraiser for them. And it got so popular that even the school's mascot eventually got involved there too. So, but hey, just pointing out, look, this stuff is in the Bible. Do you talk about this? Do you know that it's in there? Have you seen the other verses that are in the Bible? That's kind of cool. So that's one of the things campus atheist groups are doing to just get their message out there. That, look, we want to start these conversations about free speech. We want to show people what's really in these books that they hold so dear, and what better time to do that. So, second thing college groups are doing to really get their message out there is they're being political about this. They're very politically active on their campuses. And I don't mean one party or another party, but they're talking, when there's a church-state separation issue, sometimes it's the college groups that are the ones that are right there on the line. So one quick story is that there's a group called the Secular Coalition for America. If you haven't heard of it, it's kind of like the first lobbying group in DC, specifically representing atheists, agnostics, humanists. And after Obama took office, they figured, we think we might be able to have a dialogue with this administration in a way that we couldn't under the last president. And so they constantly communicated with they have a faith-based outreach program, basically, in the Obama White House. But they contacted them, and they wanted to have that dialogue, and they did have that dialogue, to the point where the people in the faith-based office said, you know what, there's so many of you, and we want to hear what you're concerned about. Why don't you atheists come to the White House and tell us about your concerns? And we'll bring people from the administration who might have some pull to at least listen to what you have to say, maybe offer a response to what you want. And we went there. I was one of the representatives there. One of the cool things is we were able to bring in a lot of local students around the DC area as part of that meeting. But the few things we talked about there, we're not saying, look, we want Obama to say God doesn't exist. That's not what we were doing. We were talking about things like, look, we want to make sure there's no proselytizing in the military. We want to make sure that a parent whose child is dying because they believe that you should pray to heal your child instead of taking the child to a doctor, we want them to get punished, and that ought to be some federal law for that. And also, this faith-based office, you shouldn't be able to give money to religious organizations and then have them be allowed to discriminate. Those are the things we were talking about. But we had a lot of students there. And, some Christian websites made a huge deal of that. Atheists invited to the White House interfaith meeting or something like that. But actually, Fox News was really pissed off that atheists were invited to the White House. They made a big deal of this too. The beautiful thing about SSA, the Secular Student Alliance, is that whenever we talked about this, it was all about the students who went there. It was all about how students are getting active in this stuff. And that's one of the benefits to a group like the Secular Student Alliance. When things like this happen, we're able to draw in students from local areas. If there's something happening in your state, we can contact local student groups and say, this is happening. Maybe there's a way for you to respond to this. Something that happened in University of North Carolina. A lot of city council meetings. This one happens in Greensboro. A lot of city council meetings say invocation prayers before their meetings actually begin. And, sometimes they say it's all denominations are invited, including non-Christians, but it's almost always predominantly Christian. Well, some students at the University of North Carolina said, we want to put a stop to this. What can we do about it? And they went. They went to the city council meetings, and they gave these speeches that said why there's a problem with this. They were not loud and angry speeches. They're just saying, look, here's why this is a constitutional issue. This is why I have a problem with it, and this is how you should approach it. I don't particularly remember if the Greensboro City Council ended up stopping the invocations, but the fact that those students spoke, even better, the fact that it was videotaped and put it on YouTube, which is awesome, people were able to see, look, these are really intelligent people that are there speaking about this stuff. Maybe there's something to what they have to say. At the same time, sometimes the invocation prayers don't stop. So, for example, there's a guy named Tom Coward who was elected mayor of a city in Maine. And he said, okay, well, I want an invocation prayer at my inauguration. That's what all the mayors do, so I might do that too. And he actually contacted a local student group. This is a student named Andrew Lovely. Andrew wrote an email to Tom Coward and said, look, you shouldn't have this invocation. Let me tell you why. And Tom Coward actually said, oh, well, if you're a secular humanist, why don't you come and deliver the invocation? So we had a student who was a humanist deliver a wonderful invocation speech at this mayor's inauguration that was truly like interfaith, if you want to use that word. And one more cool way to get politically active about this stuff. On a lot of campuses, they have student officers. They have, class president, student council president, things like that at colleges. And we're encouraging, look, if you're part of a student group on campus, even if you're not, if you're an atheist, run for those offices. Maybe they'll give you a training for when you're running for those offices for Congress and for your state governments too. But there's a student named Evan Clark. It's hard to see in this picture. He ran for student council of his college, and he actually won. And it's kind of cool that an atheist can win an elected office at a school. He's their college president. What makes it even cooler is that it's a Lutheran school that he goes to. So he goes to Cal Lutheran. He was elected student body president. How awesome is that? So just a few students getting politically active here, which is an awesome thing. All right, next thing student groups are doing, being clever. They're just very smart. Like, they're doing things that you would never see, like, even local groups do. Just because they're young, they have all these cool ideas, and, like, we could steal them and use them in local groups and stuff like that. One example, again, I'll mention Jen McCrite, who heard a guy talk about, like, an Islamic imam say, earthquakes are caused because women are dressing scantily clad, and stuff like that. And she's like, that's ridiculous, that's not how earthquakes happen, so women, let's just dress however we want, and we could dress provocatively, and it's not going to cause an earthquake. But you know what? If he's right, we'll all dress that way a week from now, and we'll cause the biggest earthquake in the world. We'll call it Bootquake. And not only did it get incredible amounts of press, Stephen Colbert was talking about it, Jen was on CNN, I think, but hey, guess what? Huge earthquake never happened. But that's something you just don't see a lot of places. Here's another one. At the University of Arizona, how many of you, when you were at college, had a campus preacher show up to your school? There's got to be more than that. Campus preachers at your school? One of the things that's annoying is when a campus preacher comes, they're always loud and they're always yelling at you. It's the fire and brimstone type of speech. How do you respond to something like that effectively? Well, at the University of Arizona, one guy had this shirt that basically points to one of the female preachers saying, "I don't permit a woman to speak," quoting the Bible verse, just stood there while she spoke, which is clever. One thing I really like is one group, there's a guy named Brother Jed who goes to a lot of these campuses. And one group actually created a bingo card that they handed out. And the bingo card had boxes that said, homosexuals, sodomy, hell. And they had all these squares there. They would hand out all these different cards, and they would sit around Brother Jed as he spoke. And as he spoke, if he said that word, you could cross it off on your thing. And if you got a bingo, you would get a prize from the local group. You'd get a book by Richard Dawkins, something like that. They made a game out of it, which is awesome. Another group at University of Oregon did something really clever. They were like, okay, here's this guy who's really loud, who's preaching. He's not making a lot of sense, and he's just making people upset. But how can we beat him at his own game? And they thought about what they did at the beginning of the year. This group at the University of Oregon has a really big student group, like 80 or 90 people showed up to their first meeting on campus. That's huge. And one of the things that the group leaders did is they said, we just want people to get to know each other. But as their icebreaker, what they did is they had tables like this, and at each table they gave them a common household object, like a toaster, a spoon, and they said, this is your new God. Make a religion out of it. And tell us you're going to have a representative from your group tell us about what your faith believes. And at one table, they were given a boot. And they created this whole thing, and this kid apparently gets up on stage, and he says, this is your new God. This is, our God is boots. God helps us protect us from the evil water that's on the ground, you know? And, Crocs, those are the work of the devil. And he goes on for a while, but they create a whole religion out of this. So when this campus preacher was out there, they said, well, if he can talk about crazy things and get a lot of people to listen to him, so can we. So the guy gets out there with the boots, and he starts preaching right next to him. And he got a bigger audience. To the point where Brother Jed is like, screw it, I'm just sitting down, you win. How cool is that? Yeah, they also, I think JT was the one who did this at his campus back there. When Brother Jed came, they actually used him as a fundraiser. They said, like, if you disagree with what he says, they actually found a way to talk to him. I think, I could be getting the story wrong, but they talked to Brother Jed and they said, can we use you as a fundraiser? Like, can we throw water balloons at you as a fundraiser or something like that for if we raise money for a good cause? And he's like, I don't really care, whatever. So they said, you know, if you want to throw a water balloon at his face, donate $1 to the Atheist group, and maybe they donated that to charity or something. They raised the money pretty quickly, and there was this lesbian student who ended up with the honors of getting the water balloon in her hand, and she threw it at him, and it was good times. To his credit, Brother Jed, he knew that was coming, he volunteered to do that, so good for him. This is what another group is doing on campus, just a clever thing you don't see a lot of places. This is the university, this is the SSA at Texas Tech. They said, look, it's National Blasphemy Day. And not only that, you could sell us your soul for a cookie and see how many people do it. And a lot of people did it. What made it, what I really loved, I don't have the picture here, they actually had a big poster of gingerbread men, and as people sold their souls and got a cookie in return, and again, the whole point saying, you don't actually have a soul, it doesn't exist, you can sell it to us, not a big deal. They would color in the gingerbread men as a soul was given to them, so they had kind of a thermometer of how many souls they had, which is kind of cool. This is the Center for Inquiry group at Grand Rapids, Michigan. They said, let's send atheists to church. We're all atheists in this group. And you know what? If you're a religious person and you donate to us, and I think the money went to charity, they said you can say, hey, you come with me to my church this weekend, and that's what you would get for your donation. The atheists would go to church with you. And after the weekend ended, they would have a discussion, a big one, with the Christian groups and the atheist groups, to talk about what they saw at these churches and have a discussion about what's right and wrong and good and bad. That's always fun. And I don't know if Sean and Nikki are here, but the group at Wichita State University just a couple months ago, because the rapture was coming and the world's going to end this October and stuff like that Harold Camping said, they said, well, if the rapture's coming on May 21st, we might as well throw a conference for atheists on May 21st, have it extend into the next day, and if we're still around, we'll just have a big party. So they had this awesome conference. They called it Rapture Day at Wichita State University. But again, student-led groups doing it with the college campuses, and they're just really cool ideas that I don't think I could have thought of anytime soon. Fourth thing that college kids are doing, they're being charitable. And this is one of the coolest things they're doing. What they're doing with their message, they're not just saying we can be good without God. They're not just saying, give us money so our campus group can grow. They're saying, look, we're atheists, we're good people. Let's just do nice things for other people. Like, why can't we? Let's show people that we're just as charitable as all the religious groups out there. So here's one example. This is in Metro State in Colorado. The Metro State Atheists had a food bank. There's a local food bank, and they said, hey, look, if you can donate non-perishable foods, we'll give you a banned book in return. And we'll take all those non-perishable food items that you donate to us, and we'll give it to this food bank. And they actually had a donation box on their website where they said, look, if you could send us money so we can buy the banned books, or if you could send us banned books, we can use that to get more food to give to this. Kind of cool. University of Northern Iowa, so not far from here, they actually heard that a Christian group was doing a 24/7 prayer week. They were basically going to pray and I think fast for like 24 hours for the whole week. So they said, well, prayer's not going to help anything, so why don't we have a 24/7 service week and just do a volunteer project every single day? So they ended up doing that. They went to a food bank, they planted trees, they cleaned up roads, they went to a local retirement home, every day for the span of a week they did these things, just to show, look, they're allowed to pray. We're not going to stop them from praying if they want to, but this is probably going to do more good for other people than the praying is ever going to do. There's also atheists helping the homeless. This happens in Texas. This group says, look, we don't have a lot of money, we're a local group, we don't have a lot of funding, but with the little bits of money we do have, why don't we buy some bread and peanut butter and apples and granola bars and whatever, generic cola, and just make lunches, and because we know where the homeless people are in our city in Austin, so let's just set up shop in certain places where we know there are homeless people and make them lunches. Why not? It's cheap for us, all of us can help out, and the people really need it. And they've done this repeatedly. And they videotape it every time they do it, and you get like a time-lapse footage of how many people are going through their tables, and it's a lot. So if you go on YouTube and type in atheists helping the homeless, you can see a bunch of those videos, and they're amazing. One more thing here, Texas A&M, they heard Brother Jed was coming to their campus too, so they decided to do something called Donations Against Damnations. And they said, look, this guy, this preacher here, he's going to condemn all of us to hell because we're gay or lesbian or atheist or we don't agree with him in lockstep, what have you. So, hey, if you want to give us money, we're going to take whatever donations we get in response to him being there, and we're going to give it to different groups on campus that could use it, like the Sexual Health Center and the Pride group on campus and the Atheist group on campus. And they ended up raising like a few $100s, which is awesome. Yeah, they actually had Christians helping them out too, because the Christians didn't like this preacher guy either, and they said, look, at least the money's going to a good cause, so there you go. This is my friend Leslie. She goes to Reed College in Oregon, and Leslie said, she heard all these stories about how prisoners, You always hear prisoners are bad people, but they go to jail and there's all these Bibles. Apparently all these prisoners, become Christian when they're in jail because they have these Bibles. And the reason they have those Bibles is because churches donate Bibles to a lot of prisons. But you never hear a prisoner say, yeah, when I was in prison, I read The End of Faith and it changed my life. You never hear that. So the reason, how come you never hear about atheist books at these prisons? So Leslie actually contacted a lot of different atheist authors and said, I want to send atheist books to a lot of prisons. Can you help out? And a lot of them sent her books. Like Michael Shermer sent her a couple boxes of his books. And Leslie would put together these books and send them to various prisons, and got to the point where she was actually getting requests from prisoners. Can you send me some of these books? And she would send them to them. I had the good fortune of reading a letter that a couple prisoners sent to Leslie as a thank you. And I don't know what stereotypes I had in my head of what prisoners' education level would be like, but they were the most articulate. They were so grateful for having something different to read, and they appreciated it so much. So, and you know what was stopping Leslie from doing this on a bigger scale was just the shipping was so much. That's what prevented her from doing this on a bigger scale. But how cool is that? And these prisoners would write her the letters and they would say, I had a chance to read the God Delusion, and I think I also put myself where Dawkins did on his 7-point scale. They're awesome. And one more thing here. A lot of students in college, on spring break, a lot of colleges give students opportunities to do an alternative spring break where they might do some volunteer work for a week. But a lot of Christian groups have the opportunity to go to places that really need help. And not only do they go there to volunteer, they go there to proselytize. And so one of the atheist groups at Ohio State was saying, look, we want to go down to New Orleans after Katrina hit, and we want to help out too. But we don't have the funding to get down there. We don't really know how to do it. But the Christian group on campus does know how to do it, and they do have the funding. So they kind of asked the Christian group, they had connections there, they knew some of the people, they were friends. They said, can we go with you down to New Orleans and help out? And they did. They ended up going together to New Orleans and chipping in. And actually the group at University of Illinois did the same thing with the Christian group on their campus. So you would have these, what I hear are awesome bus rides or car rides down south, and you can imagine what the conversations are like in those cars, where they would go for a week and they would help out. It doesn't matter what religion any of these people are. They're helping out people who need the help. And then they would drive back up with a Christian group. And they've been doing this for a few years now running, which is amazing. So that's being charitable. The last thing that college groups are doing that I think is phenomenal is just being there. Like, as an atheist who went to college and didn't know any other atheists, it was so important for me to try to meet other atheists, just to know that I could talk to them without, censoring myself. And so the fact that you can now go to a college group or go to a college campus and ask them, is there an SSA group here? Is there a Center for Inquiry group here? And usually, a lot of times the answer is yes, which is amazing. But just the fact that these groups exist is a huge deal. It lets you know you're not alone. And so I love this. This is Alabama, the group at Alabama. They have this poster, "We believe in good." I just think that's the happiest poster I've ever seen. If that was like a plush doll, I would buy many of them. Just to show, look, this is what we're about. If you want to join our group, this is the sort of thing we talk about. This year, because the SSA promoted something called Ask an Atheist Day. And it was an idea that one of our college groups sent to us. They said, look, we're just going to set up a table on our quad. We're going to have a poster that says, if you have any questions for atheists, we're right here. Go ahead and ask us any question you have about atheism. And they had amazing discussions. And this college group said, hey, can we do this on a bigger scale? The SSA sent out material to all of our campus groups saying, if you want to do this, here's all the stuff you might need. And this happened at a lot of campuses, including some high schools. And a high school in my area, they're not an official atheist group at the high school, but a couple students, with the permission of their administration, set up a table during the lunch hours, kind of in the back of the room, had a sign that said, Ask an Atheist, and kids could come up and ask them whatever they wanted. One parent heard about this, and she actually took her kids out of school the rest of the day, which is amazing. But the fact that they're atheists, and look, if you're an atheist and you don't know any others, that's one way to know that they're out there. I got a call from the Chicago Tribune, huge newspaper in Chicago, and they said, look, can you connect us with any college atheist groups? Because we want to do an article about them. And I'm like, you want to talk to college atheist groups? One, that's awesome. Two, yeah, there are a ton of them in the area. I can hook you up with all of them. And so I told this reporter, look, here's all the contacts you need, because there's a bunch. She actually went to like 2 or 3 different groups, sat in on their meetings, talked to the students there, And it ended up in the Chicago Tribune with the front page on the Chicago Tribune magazine. This is the front page article that just says the unbelievers. Make that what you will of the title. But it was just pictures of 8 smiling, happy atheists. And the article talked about what they're up against on their campuses, what they're trying to promote on their campus. It's not just that they don't believe in God, it's trying to break down those stereotypes people have of atheists. And it was just this wonderful, positive article that existed because those groups are out there. And now, thanks to JT and the Secular Student Alliance, we have the ability to now spend time focusing on high school groups. Because high schoolers are allowed to have religious groups as well. They need a sponsor on their campus, things like that. But we're going to see a whole bunch of high school atheist groups form in the next couple of years. They've just started over the past few on a broader scale. In fact, the New York Times did a piece about one particular high school group and about the movement as a whole, where they featured like a high school atheist group as the big picture. Last couple things I want to share. If you're not on college, how can you help out? How can you show people that you exist? One way is just, being out as an atheist publicly. And I know that's hard for a lot of people. Sometimes you have work-related issues, family-related issues, and I totally understand that. But, one thing I saw on Facebook this year, there was a thing called A Week, and it uses the Richard Dawkins Out campaign, that scarlet letter A, and they said, look, just make that A your profile picture. And if people don't get it, if they don't know what it stands for, maybe they'll ask you and you can have that conversation. Or an alternative to that is, if you think the A doesn't do enough, just have a picture of yourself holding up a sign that says, I'm an atheist. And I saw a bunch of these pictures and they're really amazing. Like, that one says, like, I'm an atheist, and I'm a dad, and I'm a student, and I'm a whatever. All the traits about this person, and atheist. There you go. I'm an atheist. What did that say? I speak Spanish, something like that. Hello, I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist and I love you. How sweet is that? Just those pictures. Look, if you could have that up there in a place where your friends can see it, what are they going to say? They're not going to say, what? Go to hell. I mean, that's not the first reaction you're probably getting. Maybe you'll get that from a few people, but just the fact that you're out there. And the last thing here, just to point out, the number of groups that the Secular Student Alliance has, and we do a really good job. Our staff does an amazing job of tracking these groups, making sure they actually exist and are out there. That number has jumped tremendously, and this is just from March. We're over 250 groups. I wouldn't be surprised if that number started growing exponentially even more. But there's a lot out there. But if you know anyone who's at college, if you know anyone who wants to start a campus group, talk to JT before you leave today and get some information. And if you have any questions for me, there's my contact information. Let me know if you have any questions, or if I missed something here that you thought I should have mentioned, let me know. But that's all I got, so thank you so much.